Hey guys, it's Graham. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about the 4 worst things about being a live-in au pair. Before I get too far into this video, if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I very much appreciate all the support you guys have given me, and the channel is really growing at this point, so thank you so much. I appreciate it. That being said, let's jump right into this video. Today is a beautiful Tuesday morning here in Seville. Clear skies as always. It's gonna be a really hot day in the middle of September. And today I really wanna talk about the negatives of being a live-in au pair. If you follow my channel, you've probably heard me say that I highly suggest au pairs be live-in. I think it is a great idea to be live-in, and I think there's a lot more positives than negatives, but that doesn't negate the fact that sometimes being live-in is not ideal. There are aspects of it that are just not fun and generally suck. I've been a live-in au pair 3 times at this point, and there are a few really important things to make sure that your live-in experience goes well, like perhaps having your own bathroom, definitely having a door on your bedroom or having somewhere where you can literally shut off to make yours, having lots of closet space. But also, when you're live-in, you're going to forfeit certain rights, certain things that you just can't get over. So that's some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, and then I plan on making another video really soon about the great parts of being a live-in au pair. And like I said earlier, there are so many more positive aspects to it than negative aspects, but as always, I like to give you guys both sides of the story so you can make the judgment for yourself to figure out what's better. Before I do get into the first point, you should know that most host families are offering live-in positions. Generally, very few host families offer live-out positions because that is a pretty big expense on their part. They have to pay for an apartment essentially. And I have noticed that for some reason a lot of families in Paris offer live-out options. But here in Spain at least, and I think generally pretty much every other au pair country, live-in is the most popular option, and it is the option that I think is going to help integrate you into the culture and the language. The last thing I'm going to say before I jump into the first point is, if you are debating whether you should be live-in or live-out, or if you're having to weigh your options, I really suggest that you talk to people who are live-in and talk to people who are live-out. Go on Facebook au pair forums and ask to speak to people who are live-out au pairs, who are live-in au pairs, and just pick their brains to see what's best. But I do think this video will give you a good idea of what being live-in is like, and then that next video will also give you the upsides of being live-in. Alright, so getting that big intro out of the way, let's jump into the very first worst thing about being a live-in au pair, and that is little to no privacy. I listed this one first because when I was thinking about this video, this is the first thing that came to mind, because I think it's probably the biggest part for me about being a live-in au pair. But you have very little privacy as an au pair because you are living in somebody else's home, and at the end of the day, it is their home. There's really nothing preventing people from walking into your room or just coming to visit you anytime they want, whether that's good or whether that's bad. But as a result, it does make for some more awkward situations because you have a really hard time controlling your own privacy. In my experience as a live-in au pair, I found that the kids rarely knock before entering, or they rarely ask before entering. They just barge in, and it really makes sense when you think about it. And I don't want to get too far into this because this is kind of my next point, but it is their house. They've lived here likely their entire lives. This room, the room that you are calling your own, is really their room. So you do have to keep that in mind when you're weighing out the live-in option, just thinking about people can enter your room anytime they want. I think most host families respect this boundary and don't enter the room of the au pair, but I have heard of some really awkward stories or even some horror stories where the families just enter, they do whatever they want, they move your clothes, they move your things, and that's not okay. That's not what being a live-in is about, and that oversteps the privacy boundary. Another really difficult thing about the no privacy is your life is on display. And what I mean by this is not just how you live in your bedroom, but also your private life, your life outside of work. I was reading on an au pair forum just this last week where a girl went out to party, she got really drunk, she came back, forgot her keys, and ended up having to bang on the front door at 3 a.m. because she forgot her keys. I mean, your host family will see your private life. They're going to see what you do in your off time, and you just kind of have to be okay with that, or don't be a live-in au pair. It is just something to get used to and something that you have to think about before becoming an au pair. Thankfully, this is something I thought about, and it's something that I don't mind, so it's not that big of a deal, but I have heard au pairs say that this makes for a really difficult experience. The second really sucky thing about being a live-in au pair is nothing is really your own. What I mean by this is when you are a live-in au pair, you are living in somebody else's house. You're living in somebody else's room. You're sleeping on somebody else's bed, and you're occupying things that somebody else purchased. When you become a live-in au pair, you forfeit some sense of ownership in your personal things. Essentially, everything that you have as a live-in au pair has been given to you. This mirror behind me, I didn't buy it. These pictures, I didn't buy it. Those cabinets, I didn't pick it out. The color of my room, I didn't pick. So everything that you have has been chosen for you, and as a result, I think it makes nesting or making yourself comfortable, I think it makes it a bit more difficult because you haven't really picked out anything of your own. Nothing is your own, it's all somebody else's. An example of this, my host mom sent me the Instagrams of their former au pairs. And so I went and followed one of their au pairs, and I was looking through her highlights on her Instagram story. And in one highlight, I noticed there were pictures of my room. Everything was the exact same. She was sitting on my bed with her boyfriend right there, just on my bed. And so as I was looking over this Instagram story, it hit me like, this is not my room. This is not my house. This is a room that's been shared by 4 other au pairs. 4 other people have lived here, and nothing here is really my own. It's been the stuff of 4 other people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or that somebody's at fault for that, but as I was looking over this picture, it did kind of sober me to realize that it's not my stuff. And that does make it much more difficult to integrate into the family life, knowing that you just don't have anything of your own. You're completely reliant on other people to give you the things that you need. One big suggestion that I have to kind of get over this hump, and I'm going to talk about this in the positive aspects of au pairing as well, I really suggest that you nest. This is a word that I used a second ago, but what I mean here is making the space your own, and this can be really, really simple. I don't mean repaint the whole bedroom or get a new comforter, get a new desk, whatever. No, I mean just getting a few little knickknacks here and there that are yours. For example, in my shower, I went and bought some body wash that I really like the smell of. It's a simple thing, but it is mine. I picked it out. I recently went and bought some notebooks and some pens and pencils that I really liked. I brought my own clothes. I did not purchase clothes when I got here. So these are little steps, very simple things, but it does help to make the space feel like your own. If you're still not really tracking, this is why we're so comfortable in our bedrooms back home. Why? Because everything in it we have worked for. We likely picked it out, or at least we had some input as to what we wanted, and so that's why we feel so comfortable in our own rooms or in our own cars. So when you are coming to live in somebody else's house, you do need to make it somewhat your own space so you can really relax and make it yours. The third negative aspect of being a live-in au pair is you eat what the family eats. Now, this could also be a positive aspect if you don't like to cook or if you don't know how to cook, but for me, someone who really enjoys cooking and who loves food in general, eating what my host family eats can sometimes be a real downer. And I'm not just referring to my current host family. I think anytime other people cook all of your meals for you, it can be a bit depressing. But as a live-in au pair, most of your meals will be purchased by the host family. You are eating out of their kitchen, so they'll likely also purchase the groceries. This leaves you, like I said earlier, without much input, and it's kind of hard to make it feel like your own. I know some host families do buy their au pairs groceries in the sense that the au pair like picks out what they want or they'll hand the receipt to the host parents, but I think in general most live-in au pairs do eat what the host family eats, for better or for worse, and for me I do find this to be a negative aspect of au pairing. A lot of host families will ask their au pairs to cook, mine does not, but a lot will, and if they do, then you might be able to pick out some of your food options a bit better, but in general most au pairs don't have this option. The big thing I have to say here is talk with your host family about their diet and about their eating schedule in the interviews. I cannot stress this one highly enough. You really do need to know what they eat and whether you're going to like what they eat before you ever come to live with them. If you really like the host family, but you don't like their eating habits or their eating schedule, also talk about in the interviews whether they would be comfortable with you cooking for yourself or whether they would purchase groceries for you to cook. That's a really important thing, and I know it doesn't sound like much, but when you're here, when you're completely isolated, sometimes picking out the food you eat can totally make the difference between a really good day and a really bad day. So that is something that I suggest you do. The last really difficult thing about being a live-in au pair, and I should have put this one second or even first, is you live where you work. I feel like I've talked about this in the past, but living where you work can just be a really draining, exhausting experience. I became an au pair because I love kids. I love working with kids, and I feel like at this stage of my life, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But a lot of au pairs don't really love kids. They became an au pair to travel or to have a year abroad. So this is not such a big point for me, but I do hear a lot of complaints from a lot of au pairs about having a hard time separating your work life and your private life. And this is definitely something that I experience as well. But being able to separate work and play is a very difficult balance that I don't think many au pairs really get the grasp of. Living where you work means that it's really difficult to find time off and find time for yourself. If you like going out and partying and you don't generally spend much of your off time at your host family's house, then this point probably will not be as big of a deal for you as it is for someone like me who does enjoy spending their off time at home. But when you are at home, the kids and I think the parents oftentimes just see it as you're available. And as a result, whether you are available or whether you're not, I think that it makes it a lot more difficult to separate your working time and your off time. I've already said this in this video and I say it pretty much in every video. I love my host kids. I love my job, so I really don't mind working extra or spending extra time with the kids. But a lot of people do, and it can be a really exhausting thing if you're not used to spending time with children or if you don't really enjoy it. A good example of this, and this is a really sweet example, this is an example that I very much appreciate. One of my host children, the 8-year-old, he's recently gotten in the habit of coming into my bedroom at night and he and I reading together. I do not mind that at all. I think it is the sweetest thing in the world. I love it. But if someone does not enjoy kids, or if they don't really want to have that family aspect, then they probably would not appreciate that. And of course, that is something you could probably shut down with your host parents. But stuff like that does happen when you're a live-in au pair, and it's really unavoidable. Personally, I suggest when things like that happen, embrace it. They're really sweet moments. They're really good bonding moments. But if you don't like it, then you don't like it. The last thing I'm going to say about this point is when you are a live-in au pair, when you do live where you work, it can be really awkward if you're in conflict with your host parents or your host kids. I used to work at a bakery in the US, and if I ever had a disagreement with my boss or if something happened, you know, who cares? I'm off the shift in a couple hours anyway. I won't see them for a while. But when you live with your bosses, when you live with your job, it's practically impossible to get away from your job. So if you do have a conflict with your host parents or with your host kids, it can be a really uncomfortable situation because you are living in the same house with them. Even when you stop working, you're still around them. And of course, there's ways to get around this, like going out and hanging out with friends or going and getting coffee. But still, at the end of the day, you're going to be sleeping under their roof, you're going to be seeing them, and it just makes for a generally awkward experience if you're having that conflict. Overall, in conclusion with this video, being a live-in au pair definitely has some negative aspects. That's very specifically what I'm talking about today. But overall, I do think it's a great experience, and I think the vast majority of au pairs should be live-in. So be watching out, as I'll be posting a new video pretty soon about the positive aspects of being a live-in au pair, and I do really think you should watch that after watching this, just to compare and contrast and see what you think. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think. I really do appreciate all your support, and I read every single comment. Thank you so much for watching. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta luego. Ciao.